Hello everybody, JGC Anime here, and today we are going to be reviewing The World's Finest Assassin Gets Reincarnated in Another World as an Aristocrat. I believe that's how you say it. But yeah, today we're going to be talking about probably one of what was my favorite animes. Yes, I'm going to just admit it, I liked it a lot. It was one of my favorite animes of, I'm not sure which season it came out. I think it came out last season or the season before that. But whatever, let's just talk about it. So, what is the story summary? So we have our main character, yada yada yada, he's the world's finest assassin. However, after he officially retires from being an assassin, he gets on a plane to go off and train a bunch of new assassins, live a happy life, kind of like a retirement. However, the people who raised him and hired him to be an assassin decided, you know what, we can't let any information get out, and just go ahead and kill him while he's on the plane, making it look like an accident. And after that, a goddess brings him to the afterlife type place and tells him he gets another shot at living by going to another world and having to survive there and kill the supposed hero who will apparently go evil over time. So that's kind of like a basic story summary. Now let's talk about some of the stuff I liked and disliked. What I really liked actually was quite a bit of the characters. I actually enjoyed a fair amount of the characters. There were very few I disliked. I think there was one, if I remember her name, her name was Maha, I think. She was someone who I didn't think was quite developed in the series. She's still an adorable character. However, I can talk about more about her in the spoiler section about why I didn't think her character was that well done. However, other characters like the character Tart, the character Dia, and the main character whose name will, for the rest of this review, will be referred to as Lou, his name after he was reincarnated. I thought all of them, including the villains as well, and even the goddess character was probably actually she was my favorite character. But overall, I still really liked a lot of the characters. The opening for this series was an absolute banger. I love the opening for this. I've already listened to it like 40, 80 times. I don't know, I haven't been keeping count, but I definitely loved the opening. It was a very good song. And what surprised me the most actually was definitely by who this was written by. As many people have pointed out, this series was written by the same one who created the show Redo of Healer. Now, if you haven't heard of Redo of Healer, you probably shouldn't. Look it up, it's not worth it. However, if you have watched Redo of Healer or know what it is, you probably know what I'm referring to when I say that. Now, as someone who really didn't care for Redo of Healer, I didn't love it or hate it. I just thought it was there and I accepted it as part of the world now because it was just there. I wasn't too, biased when entering this anime. When I was going into it, I just thought of it as an anime. So that didn't really influence my opinion on it at all because I didn't consider it to be a major player. It's just that was a constantly brought up thing whenever people would talk about this anime, which I feel like was a complete unnecessity because the show on its own is a completely different story, has a completely different vibe, and I wish people would stop trying to compare the two. Some things I definitely did dislike, as I already mentioned. One of the characters, Maha, has this really dumb story. Well, it's not dumb. It's the way it was executed was dumb. And I do have to also admit that the ending was pretty awkward. I felt like the ending of the season was definitely awkward. However, I did kind of appreciate the fact that apparently it was all based off a singular volume. So I don't know how they managed to squeeze the whole story out of less than a single volume. But if that isn't the case and they actually used 2 volumes, that would be a little more understandable. However, if they did use 1 volume, that's impressive. But overall, I actually didn't hate this series. Although I did learn something funny. So apparently there is actually a uncensored cut of the series where they just don't censor some parts of the anime that would be censored otherwise, but I didn't even notice. Once I was told that there was an uncensored cut, I was just like, oh, okay, cool. And I just moved on with my day because I took a look at it and there's no difference between the two. There's no difference at all. So I can't really say if I dislike it that or not, since it didn't really have any effect on my viewing experience. If it's not like Redo of Healer where if you don't watch the uncensored cut, you feel like you've lost a lot. It just did not affect me whatsoever. So I can't really say if I like or dislike that. In terms of spoiler-free thoughts, I actually really enjoyed this anime quite a bit. I thought every single episode, for the most part, was solid. I think there was only like 1 or 2 episodes I couldn't really get into, but other than that, I had a great time with this anime, and I can't really say anything bad about it since I just fell in love with this anime and its characters and its world, and maybe it's just because I'm really into like in-depth characters, like they have some development before they get reincarnated rather than just being a blank slate. It was interesting seeing the protagonist be this serious assassin killer who understood what it was like to take a life and tried to, rather than just continue being a cold hard assassin, attempts to grow as a person, which I think is a really good batch of storytelling that I wish more TV shows would take more attention to. Not being assassins, just having their characters be pre-developed before they send them to other worlds, since I love the isekai genre compared to a lot of people, and I just wish that the isekai genre's protagonists were more unique and weren't either labeled as complete perverts or people who are mistaken as perverts just because of their dumb luck in that regard. But yeah, that's all I can really say without spoiling too much of the series, so we are about to enter the spoiler section. Here is a timestamp to when the spoiler section will end, and yeah, I'm just going to count down from 5. If you're still here afterwards, get ready for spoilers. And also, if you have seen the series, I recommend sticking around for this spoiler section, since I feel like I make a few decent points. And if you haven't seen the show, I'd recommend skipping to the end, but I do appreciate anyone who listens to the spoiler section if they have watched the show. Anyway, let's just count down from 5. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so going back to what I think about the Maha storyline. So the character Maha is this, I'm guessing blue-haired or whatever. Anime hair colors are weird because I've heard people call a orange-haired character brunette, even though it was clearly not a brunette. It was a very, very orange hair. But I'm guessing her hair is blue since that's what it looks like. She has probably the most confusing story. The others had pretty basic stories. The character Tart was someone who was left out of the family simply because they didn't have enough for food. And that's how she ends up with the main character, Lou. And even he clarifies that in order to get her on his side, he did a somewhat brainwashing technique of making her feel important, simply because he was manipulating her, which definitely feels like something an assassin could easily do. And as well for Dia, who was very well introduced, and while I definitely found the fact that they did the stupid reveal of she's actually, I think they said it was her or his cousin or something, I don't know, that was pretty stupid. That was very stupid, and I don't get why anime has to constantly make characters related, because like I really liked Dia as a character. However, I find the whole point of her being, you know, a related person to Lou was definitely one of the worst parts of the story. But hey, it's stupid harem fantasy. What are you gonna do? It's just gonna be how the cookie crumbles. And the reason I thought Maha's story was probably the weakest, going back to that, it's mainly just because of how it was executed without much dialogue. Like, I think that sometimes show don't tell is the better phrasing. However, in this case, there wasn't enough tell to help me understand. Because the story starts off with Maha and her group of friends all trying to survive out in the world by trying to help out tourists and stuff like that, which is really interesting, before getting kidnapped and forced to basically become slaves. And it's a very, very interesting concept. However, after everything that happens, Lou shows up, and then all of a sudden she's calling him her prince, and she's just all over him, which it doesn't make much sense. I feel like there was some missing dialogue there, and I'm wondering if maybe, I haven't read the light novels, but I do plan to, because I really want to see how the story continues. But she just suddenly starts calling him her prince, and this whole thing spirals around, and I'm so lost why she's in love with Lou. I don't get it. It's confusing. I'm lost. And I just felt like there should have been more dialogue there to explain why all of a sudden she's just like, he's my prince, I'm in love with him, he's the best ever. It felt so awkward to me. It just felt so out of place. Another thing I mentioned earlier in this is that I didn't really like the ending too much. The ending kinda came out of nowhere, where they tried to pull this really silly twist where they're like, we need you to fake kill Dia. Or they originally said you have to kill her. And we knew that wasn't going to happen. He wasn't actually going to kill her because she's literally in the opening of the series. Like, at the start of the series, they have this whole action sequence before going back and explaining the main character's story. And she's clearly with them. So it's not exactly something that you can say, oh no, he's definitely going to kill her. That would just, it just loses all the drama. However, then they do say that, oh, we need to fake kill her, which made a lot more sense. And overall, I just thought it was kind of like out of nowhere. Like the final episode, they have one final villain to fight, and he's there. He's like teased at earlier in the season, and then he's just there. And we don't even get to know him for too long because he's immediately dead by the end of the episode, or supposedly dead. One thing that animes love doing is that if a character is gone and not visibly shown, they're most likely not dead. As well as they tease the fact that the hero had arrived and it was time for Lou to get to know this person, which it also seems to be teased that the hero might be a woman, which is kind of obvious because of the eyelashes, but moving past that, if it is a guy, then it will probably be like that one person from My Team Romantic Comedy Snafu. But anyway, they do tease a lot in this anime, and I find a lot of the different aspects to be very entertaining. And one of my favorite jokes has definitely got to be where Lou is with Maha and Tart in bed because they want to be around him. He doesn't really think much of it, and then he just wakes up with a tent, and then after that he immediately explains to them like, oh, this is a perfectly normal reaction. You see, guys hit puberty at one point. It was so funny. I could not stop laughing at that part. Maybe it's because of my immature humor, but I definitely had a great time overall. And while I did have a few issues, I mostly had a great time. I thought the action, for the most part, was really solid throughout the whole show, which is understandable considering there's not too much action. However, when there is action, it is astounding, especially in the first episode, which, to be fair, that's usually where most of the fighting budget goes, in the first episode. Like, that's where it always goes. But I still think the action throughout the whole show was very solid. And I really do hope this show gets a season 2 and just, makes more progress with the series, since I really do want to see where the story is going, going forward. I love this series, and I definitely want to see more because it lived up to the hype I was hoping for. It was a solid anime, and overall, I just had an amazing time. Definitely a strong, show, and that's why we're at the conclusion now, and I'm ready to give my final thoughts. So, in my final thoughts, I thought it was a fantastic anime. Very few flaws overall, and maybe it's just because I'm into the harem action type genre, but I love these types of shows, and I thought this one was solid. I had a great time with it, and that's why I'm giving it a solid 10 out of 10. It was amazing. I had a great time. I cannot think of any show that really outstood it during the season. It outstood Mushoku Tensei, don't hate me for it. It outstood pretty much every show that came out during that time, and I just had an amazing time with it, and I don't regret sitting down and giving it a chance, since it's just an anime I had an absolutely amazing time with. And that's all I really had to say. Thank you all for watching. If you're new to the JGC Anime channel, don't forget to subscribe. And yeah, I shall see you all around. Peace!